Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Joining me for the duration of the show, Kate Hoey, Labour MP for Vauxhall, and Greg Hands, Conservative MP for Chelsea and Fulham, and the Minister for Trade and Investment. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
First of all, though, a deal has been done between the train drivers' union ASLEF and Southern Rail, so an end to months of misery for commuters should union members back the agreement. There does remain the issue of the RMT union, who represent the guards and are still in dispute with the company. So there should be no more strikes, all-out strikes, capable of bringing the system to a halt. Do you think, Kate Hoey, the RMT should fall into line too and also promise not to plan any further strikes?
Well, I'm glad that I think they're going back to have more talks, because I think part of the problem of this whole dispute has been that there's been a reluctance from the management side to actually engage fruitfully with the RMT. Now, I'm very close to the RMT. The RMT have supported my parliamentary seat for some time. And, you know, I just wish sometimes the media would actually go and talk to the ordinary members of the RMT and find out what this is. And this is real. This isn't about money. This isn't about them being greedy. But, you know, I welcome the fact that hopefully we will get an end to this, because clearly the public are getting very fed up.
What about the company, Greg Hands? It had a poor record before the strikes in terms of service and punctuality. What guarantees should be brought forward by the company to commuters that that will improve?
Well, I think this is a very costly, unnecessary strike that has gone on for far too long and has caused an enormous amount of misery for commuters into London and service users in London.
And what about the company's role in that?
I think that the company has an important role in all of this, but ultimately the company is trying to provide a service. Commuters are relying on that.
But
it's
it's
effectively
a
a monopoly provision. And what these strikes have done, entirely unnecessarily, have been to disrupt services. It cost London an enormous amount. The last strike cost in the region of £300 million for the economy and the London.
And you're saying the company has no responsibility in that, or the government for that matter? Chris Grayling actually was reluctant to intervene at any point.
Well, I think what the company is trying to do, as I understand it, in terms of like drivers, trains without conductors, which is entirely normal practice across large swathes of our commuter railway, trying to do exactly the same thing. It's been proven to be safe. What we have here is a small trade union taking commuters hostage, effectively, in driving forward their political.
Well, what do you say to that there was a sort of political platform in all of this?
Well, I genuinely don't. I think, and if I'm on a train, I like to feel there is somebody there that I can make contact with. And I think there is a role for guards. And this is about cutting money. And I think if the company had been honest about this and said from the beginning that we are trying to save money, this is not about anything to do with, you know, just having a go at the RMT. But there is, I think, a political undertone to this, that a lot of people don't like a trade union that's standing up for its members. And that is what the RMT has been doing for many years.
Should the government have intervened earlier? Because it was months of misery.
Yes, they should. Chris Grayling.
Well, no, I don't think so. I think Chris Grayling has done a very, very good job throughout this.
What's he done?
But
What
we are seeing, though, is that the trade union here has effectively taken people to ransom, right the way across the whole Southern Rail network, all the way down to Brighton, and has caused a massive disruption for the UK
Chris
economy,
Grayling could have
which is
intervened to stop
costing us
that.
all severely. So.
All right, well, let's leave it there. Now, a corrupt former mayor of Tower Hamlets who ran a ruthless and dishonest campaign. That was the view of the election court judge who banned Lutfur Rahman from office for 5 years in 2015. But Sunday Politics London can reveal he's back. He can't stand for election, but Mr Rahman, who's always denied any wrongdoing, is allowed to actively campaign for others. And that's exactly what he's doing. Dan Friedman reports from Tower Hamlets.
Cast into political oblivion in 2015, Lutfur Rahman, the former mayor of Tower Hamlets, is back. But for now, at least, to the wider world, he's keeping quiet about it. Mr Rahman? Mr Rahman, I'm from the BBC. Could you just ask a couple of questions? Are you setting up a new political party tonight? Last Sunday, he was the star turner to a meeting which had been billed as a public one, until we showed up. Mr Rahman, I just want to ask you a quick question for the BBC. Is this about forming a new political party? One question, Mr Rahman.
That's not really...
Why are you touching me?
No, that's not really... I told you, wait a minute.
Meeting, yeah? Okay. As you can see, we're now being forced out.
Yeah, that's it. Private meeting, get out.
Look carefully here and you can see the man he's campaigning for to become mayor in 2018, Ohid Ahmed, a long-time ally of Mr Rahman, seen here too on the right.
The people of this borough, I said all along, will judge me on my record.
Lutfur Rahman is currently serving a 5-year ban from standing for office after being found guilty of electoral fraud in the Tower Hamlets 2014 mayoral election.
The judgment in the electoral court that removed him was just overwhelming in terms of the charges against him. I put in commissioners after discovering how appallingly he was running the council, and I firmly believe he may have a future elsewhere, but I don't think it's in politics.
But Lutfur Rahman is still involved in politics, backing Ohid Ahmed, as their campaign material clearly shows. In it, Mr Rahman says he will do everything he can to help him win back the mayoralty. The same logo features as part of an application to the Electoral Commission to form a new political party.
Ohid Ahmed was very, very loyal to him when he was mayor. Indeed, he was his deputy for the first 4 years, and then had a place in his cabinet afterwards, and was kind of unofficial campaign manager for his first mayoral attempt. So there is a genuine bond there. Were Ohid Ahmed to be elected, I would imagine that Lutfur Rahman would probably reappear as an advisor. And there'd be nothing to stop that.
Both Ohid Ahmed and Lutfur Rahman declined to be interviewed by the BBC. But in a statement, Mr Ahmed says of Mr Rahman's involvement,
"Everyone has a right to start a new political party or support an existing one. I am standing in 2018 and have yet to finalise whether I will stand as an independent or under a party banner."
In Tower Hamlets, the people most impacted by the political upheaval here are split on their former mayor.
He got away with everything. So as far as I'm concerned, it's a fraud.
Majority of the community don't believe that. I think that he was more with a political move rather than him physically doing corruption.
Well, I think if he had any shame, he would hang his head and he would go away quietly for maybe a lifetime, reflect on his activities, the disrepute he brought into our borough, the massive expense to local community through legal and other costs, and he wouldn't be doing anything of the sort, but clearly he hasn't learned. I'm sort of hopeful that the people of our borough will recognise that he led us in a dead end and that we need to move forward.
So given his recent record, will Mr Rahman's backing turn out to be a blessing or a curse?
Well, we made several attempts to contact Mr Rahman, inviting him or one of his associates to take part in the programme, but they were unavailable. Kate Hoey, he's barred from standing for public office himself, but what's to stop him campaigning? Why shouldn't he?
Well, there's nothing to stop him campaigning. And I kind of think, to be honest, I'd be absolutely straight. I don't know why you're having something like this on and giving him all that publicity. I mean, if he wants to start another political party, I agree with John Biggs. I just hope that the people of Tower Hamlets will understand and see through him and see through his supporters. But, you know, he legally, he's not doing anything wrong at the moment. And all we're doing now is kind of giving him a lot of publicity, very free.
Well, except does Greg Hands agree with you? Should he be allowed to campaign? He was barred from standing for public office, but not stopped from campaigning.
Well, this is a man who was found guilty of illegal and corrupt practices less than 2 years ago. The government takes this incredibly seriously. My ministerial colleague Chris Skidmore has written to the Electoral Commission urging an urgent investigation into the new party, into Lutfur Rahman's role in it.
Because you say he is starting a new political
these
party.
Kind of practices. No role. There should be no role for Lutfur Rahman in British politics.
Right, and isn't that the case, that even if he isn't standing himself, he is supporting someone who will stand, who no doubt shares his beliefs? That in itself, of course, is absolutely fine, but people will say a man barred from office who brought Tower Hamlets into disgrace shouldn't be closely involved in the politics of someone else.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't know how anyone could think of even thinking of voting for him, but
so would you support?
Legally,
would you support the Conservatives in terms of this?
The government doing what they can to make sure that the very letter of what the electoral law said, and when he was found guilty of fraud, that is actually carried through.
But the letter of the law he is following here. I mean, you're going further.
Well,
you are asking for that to be extended.
Investigation. Chris Skidmore, my ministerial colleague, because of the background and the very serious problems caused by Lutfur Rahman in the past. And this has been going on for a long time in Tower Hamlets. I myself remember going to Tower Hamlets about 10 years ago to protest with Peter Gold, who's in your programme, about Tower Hamlets selling off a statue of Clem Attlee because the Labour group had never heard of Clem Attlee, the founder of the Labour Party. I mean, this is something very, very serious.
All I know is
politics.
that John Biggs is doing a very good job in Tower Hamlets, and if he stands again, I think he'll have a very good chance of being re-elected.
Is this an example of where devolution goes wrong? Too much power given locally?
Well, I think it's a demonstration sometimes that despite there being more power for local councils now, perhaps there isn't enough real scrutiny and by local people of local councils, whatever their political makeup is.
What about his popularity, though, locally?
Well, I mean, you can't
underestimate his popularity locally. The Bengali community do support him. And maybe this is Westminster politics trying to condescend to a local community.
I disagree with that, Joe. The offences were so serious and so strike at the heart of our democratic system. And it is also important to have scrutiny. I think one of the lessons from Lutfur Rahman as mayor of Tower Hamlets was his ability to avoid scrutiny, and that is something that we must also look at to make sure that directly elected mayors are answerable.
Just looking at that film, it's remarkable how many. I don't think we saw a single woman in the meeting.
Certainly looked to be dominated by them. Very briefly, though, there were 4 people who did their civic duty by bringing the case against Lutfur Rahman. They now face bankruptcy. Should the government come in to bail them out or compensate, bearing in mind they were the ones that brought this to the attention of local people?
Well, I think that's something that the government would look at. But most importantly, now the government wants there to be action taken, an investigation. We're taking this very, very seriously in terms of our interaction with the Electoral Commission, Sir Eric Pickles' own report, and Chris Skidmore, my ministerial colleague, were taking this very seriously indeed.
And we would invite Lutfur Rahman to come onto the programme at any time of his choosing to defend himself. Now, last week, President Trump signed an executive order restricting entry into the United States from 7 Muslim-majority countries. The Prime Minister is now facing calls to rescind or downgrade her invitation to the President for a state visit sometime later this year. And protests are ongoing in London. Here's Tanjil Rashid on the fallout in the capital.
London this week. Thousands turning out to protest President Trump's travel ban on people from 7 Muslim countries. London is home to many people born in countries included in the ban. The government has given assurances that British citizens will not be affected, but many Londoners aren't reassured. More than a dozen Labour MPs representing London constituencies signed a letter this week calling on the Prime Minister to do more.
Well, there are lots of people who are from the Somali community here living in London, from the Yemeni community, from the Iraqi community. They have friends and family who will be affected. They will be feeling vulnerable at this point. There are a group of people who feel disenfranchised anyway because of the increase in hate crime and Islamophobia. And as Prime Minister, how does she plan to protect them?
This is what the Prime Minister had to say.
This government is clear that that policy is wrong. We wouldn't do it. In 6 years as Home Secretary, I never introduced such a policy. We believe it is divisive and wrong.
The Mayor of London says that's not enough.
Whilst this ban is in place, I don't think we should be rolling out the red carpet and having a state visit. And his ban plays into the hand of so-called ISIS and Daesh.
Refugees are welcome here.
With feelings running high in London over the travel ban, how welcome will Donald Trump be when he travels to this city? The Met Police might well have their work cut out.
Well, joining me in the studio is Lord Brian Paddock, who spent many years at the very top of the Metropolitan Police Force. Welcome to the programme. First of all, though, as a Trade Minister, tens of thousands of Londoners were born in those 7 countries that are now facing this ban. Even with the exemptions announced this week, how does this bode for London's relationship with the new regime?
Well, London has got an incredibly important relationship with the United States. London's largest foreign trade partner is the United States. Across the whole of the UK, 1 million people each day go to work for a US company. 1 million Americans go to work in the US for a British company.
But you've seen the protest and you've heard what Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, said. The ban is awful. He says we shouldn't be rolling out the red carpet for President Trump until he lifts the ban.
Well, you heard Theresa May there say that the ban, and Boris Johnson's also said, the ban is both divisive and wrong. But ultimately, US immigration policy is, of course, a matter for the United States. We have to look after Britain's interests and the wider interests, which is actually delivered by by engaging with President Trump. When Theresa May was there last week, she delivered President Trump having 100% commitment to NATO, which is a very important commitment for the UK in terms of our national interests, in terms of our national security. And that is what is best served in this.
Would it be better to postpone, at least, the state visit?
Well, no date has yet been set.
So you think it would be a good idea?
I think having a state visit is a good idea. I think the previous 2 US presidents have also been on state visits.
Yes, not as quickly, of course, as President Trump.
Here, so that's impossible to tell, Joe. But what I will say is that it is a proper thing for us to do. We must engage with the United States, engage with the new president and the new administration.
And isn't that the realpolitik, Kate Hoey? This is the leader of the free world, as is commonly quoted. This is our most important ally in terms of global politics. Doesn't Sadiq Khan's stance towards his immigration policy actually hamper our relationship and London's relationship with the US?
Well, I think everyone has come out against the policy that he actually was elected to implement. I mean, that's the reality. He was elected on that policy. I just think most people thought he wouldn't do it, and he certainly wouldn't do it as quickly. But my view is that, we do need to keep that relationship with the United States crucially important, particularly as we're going to be leaving the EU. And I think that what is wonderful about this country, when the Chinese came, I actually went out and protested. So I think what we will be able to do when he does come is show that we are a nation that actually is able to allow peaceful protest, costing a lot of money, I imagine, but nevertheless it has to happen.
Right. What are the challenges, Brian Paddock, of policing a state visit like a President Trump one?
Well, it depends when he eventually gets here. And my understanding is that it's going to be later this year.
In the autumn.
Whereas Obama wasn't invited until his third year. So why the rush, one might ask? Brexit, got to cuddle up to the US, even however unpleasant Trump appears to be. But if it's a state visit, then you've got slow-moving, horse-drawn processions. You've got well flagged up when the procession is going to be. The policing issues are magnified. If it's an official visit, high-speed motorcades don't necessarily have to make the programme public in advance. A little easier to police.
Right.
But do we really want to invite the President of the United States here for thousands, potentially millions of people to be baying for his blood?
Right. Well, he may not want to come, of course, with that in the back. He may not want to come with that in the backdrop. But let's say he is coming, and you've said it is a visit with bells on in terms of what is involved as far as the police are concerned. What about the costs? Metropolitan Police bear those costs. What are we talking about?
Well, I think the last state visit by Chinese president cost £1.5 million. You can probably at least double that if, as I say, he continues along the path that he is going, and he continues to produce this very angry reaction amongst Londoners.
I mean, as an experienced senior police officer, his claim is he wants to make America safe. He did say in the campaign he wanted a complete and total shutdown of all Muslims entering the US. He hasn't done that with his executive order. But does it, in your mind, make America safe, or is it counterproductive when it comes to terrorism?
There's been no deaths caused in the United States by somebody who is a refugee from any of the countries that he's now banned people going to the United States for. But it can be used by ISIS, by Daesh, as a publicity thing.
Right. It's not quite true to say there have been none, but it is true that the majority haven't been from those 7 Muslim majority countries. There have been attacks, but I'm not sure anyone died as a result of them. You may be right there. What about the reaction? How would you deal with it if and when he does come, if there are mass protests across London?
Well, I've been involved in the last 18 months with 2 different state visits, the state visit of the President of China and the state visit of the President of Colombia. Certainly on the first one there were protests, and that is entirely right that people have the right to demonstrate.
Right.
Brian's right about the costs of some of these events, but democracy can be expensive. But it's very important in our democratic system that we both, A, invite people who we think it's in our national interest to invite, and B, to allow the general public, if they so wish, to demonstrate against them, for them, but to have that right to take part in a democratic process. That is the important thing here.
Kate Hoey, why did you tweet on the day of the announced ban? You've said already that to some extent he is enacting the rhetoric that he used in the campaign, but you tweeted, must find out exactly how many Syrian refugees have been taken in by other Muslim countries, particularly in the Arab world. What were you saying there?
Well, I was being a bit lazy, actually, because I should have looked up Google, and I did genuinely want to know, because I know there are some Muslim countries that are not taking Syrian refugees. And I was genuinely interested. I mean, I'm afraid I actually got the answer back probably quicker than if I'd looked up Google from the Twitter account.
Well, there you go.
But I did. I mean, I was just horrified.
That's the great power of Twitter.
How I mean, I'm beginning to feel Twitter is just attracts people who just want to actually be incredibly nasty, because I did get a lot of nasty responses to that. So I don't think on a Saturday evening again I'll be tweeting.
Well, you've been warned, obviously, then by the Twitter reaction. Brian Paddick, thank you very much for coming in. Now it's time for the rest of the political news in 60 seconds.
International news agency Thomson Reuters has agreed to pay damages to Finsbury Park Mosque after wrongly claiming it was linked to terrorism. It admitted publishing a profile based on outdated reports, which caused banks to refuse to accept the mosque as a customer. 2 women are among 4 senior officers who have made it onto the shortlist to be the next Metropolitan Police Commissioner. Cressida Dick, a former UK counter-terrorism chief at the Met, is thought to be the front-runner for the job and would become the force's first female commissioner in its 187-year history. Heathrow and the government has set out its proposals for the airport expansion with a national policy statement outlining domestic connectivity and support for communities affected by the expansion. It also puts in place a measure to mitigate noise, including a ban of 6.5 hours on scheduled night flights.
Neither of you are in favour of Heathrow expansion, I understand. So what are you going to do to stop it, Greg?
Well, in terms of what's happened so far, as a member of the government, I have the right, given by the Prime Minister along with 2 or 3 other members of the government, to oppose Heathrow expansion. But the way the government is approaching this is the right approach in terms of consulting and making sure that people have their say and their right to say their view on Heathrow. Also,
even if it's ignored.
Also, I might add, the importance of the night flight ban is something that I have campaigned on for 20 years in Hammersmith and Fulham and Chelsea and Fulham politics, for there to be a ban on night flights, which this consultation document would deliver on.
Right, and the government says it will meet the required noise and air pollution targets and therefore will be able to proceed.
But you see, even at the moment where there is a form of nighttime ban, it doesn't work and it doesn't get carried through. I mean, you just talk to anyone who lives over that flight path, 5 o'clock, 4:30 in the morning. Planes come early, they have to kind of go around because they can't land.
But that's been the case for many years.
Exactly, but it doesn't help if you're going to have another runway. I mean, I think we'll just have to keep up the campaign and hope. I mean, I just thought Gatwick had a much easier route through to getting that extra runway more quickly. But the air pollution is an important issue. It's not just about the planes, it's about the traffic going out to the airport.
And on that, I'm afraid we're going to have to stop it and do another programme at another time on airport expansion. But thanks to both of you for being here today.